Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with the headlines. The government makes its budget proposal for next year around $360 billion, an increase of 3.7% from this year. The lion's share going to health and welfare, but also a special emphasis on job creation. A new law takes effect in South Korea next month, establishing new centers to monitor human rights in North Korea, document abuse, and propose humanitarian aid projects. New hope for containing the Zika virus. U.S. researchers have identified 3 compounds that could be effective in stopping the virus from replicating and from killing fetal brain cells. The Korean government has laid out its budget proposal for next year. A lot of that will go into, of course, new job creation and novel ideas for growth engines for the future. Kim Min-ji starts us off.
Breathing life into the economy while maintaining fiscal soundness. That's the goal of the government's budget plan for next year. The total stands at 400.7 trillion won, or roughly $360 billion, up 3.7% from this year's budget. According to the proposal, roughly 1/3 will go to health, welfare, and labor, while the fields of culture, education, and national defense will also see a boost.
The focus will be first and foremost on job creation. We will also provide customized benefits for the socially disadvantaged, as well as boost investment to deal with the low birth rate and aging population.
In terms of overall support for the employment market, the government is looking to increase spending in sectors deemed promising by job seekers and extend support to companies that offer flexible work hours. The proposal also includes plans to step up investment in R&D to foster new growth engines, including autonomous driving, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence. Another portion of the budget is being set aside to push up the low birth rate by offering more financial support for families and encouraging smaller companies to establish more childcare facilities for their workers. But the heavier budget will have implications for the country's fiscal health, as the national debt to GDP ratio is expected to hit a record 40.4% next year. Although Korea's overall debt level is still much lower than that of other OECD member nations, experts say the pace of growth remains a source of concern.
During this administration, national debt is expected to hit $600 billion. That's a rapid rise of $200 billion. Although the government has emphasized fiscal soundness, there are areas that require spending no matter what. As the population gets older, their problem will get worse.
This is why experts point to reforms in the welfare system and specific policies to resolve structural problems as being crucial in securing long-term growth. They say without addressing these issues, financial solutions such as budget supplements and larger budgets will only challenge the country's fiscal soundness. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus to the supplementary budget bill now, despite an agreement among Korea's 3 major parties to pass it by today, a conclusion remains out of reach. Park Ji-won has the latest.
This morning's full assembly, in which the $9.8 billion extra spending was supposed to be approved, was cancelled after bipartisan negotiations broke down. Both sides are trading blame for failing to pass the budget. The ruling Saenuri Party criticized the main opposition Minju Party for breaking earlier agreements to pass the bill by Tuesday, saying the liberal-leaning party kept adding new conditions, including more funds for the nation's free childcare services and more financial aid for South Korean businesses shut out of the inner Korean Kaesong industrial complex. The ruling party said it's willing to discuss those proposals, but it's too late to add them to the current bill.
An agreement by the floor leaders of the 3 main political parties is a promise to the people. To break a promise like that for the sake of partisan interests is to destroy a principle and stray from the right path. By now, the disregarding of promises should be a political custom of the past.
But the Minju Party argues the ruling bloc stymied their efforts to provide financial help to citizens. It accuses the Saenuri Party of giving billions of dollars in handouts to insolvent conglomerates while ignoring the needs of ordinary people struggling to get by.
Exactly how is the ruling party trying to run the country when they refuse to allocate a few $100 million for parents and kids, while continuously injecting billions of dollars into insolvent conglomerates?
To that, the ruling party reiterated that the sole purpose of the supplementary budget this time around is to ease the pain of restructuring in the nation's shipbuilding and shipping industries.
At the core of this supplementary budget is help for those who lost their jobs during the restructuring of our ailing shipbuilding and shipping industries. The opposition bloc keeps attaching irrelevant conditions.
Both parties say they are open to negotiations, but neither of them are willing to budge just yet, as the chances of meeting the agreed deadline grow slimmer by the hour. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
More feuding among Korea's political parties. This one's over THAAD deployment. The opposition Minju Party has recently taken a more strident stance against it. Our Kim Young-gil has the updates.
Lawmakers from the Saenuri Party applauded unanimously as they adopted an official position on Tuesday in support of deploying the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System.
Deploying THAAD is the least we can do to counter North Korea's evolving nuclear and missile threats. Unifying our party's stance on the THAAD matter shows our determination to overcome the current security crisis.
Saenuri's support for putting the THAAD battery in place by the end of next year came amid widespread opposition from other parties and from residents of Seongju County, where the government plans to install the system. Visiting Karang Market in downtown Seoul, the chairwoman of the main opposition Minju Party of Korea chose to express her stance against THAAD using a melon grown in Seongju. Here, have a smell. This melon has done nothing wrong. Next week, Chairwoman Chu plans to seek agreement from Minju Party lawmakers to adopt opposition to THAAD as an official party position. The Minju Party's former interim leader Kim Jong-in had maintained a neutral stance on the issue. The minor opposition People's Party, meanwhile, has been against THAAD from the beginning and has criticized the Minju Party for its ambiguous stance. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Putting an end to more than a decade-long political debate, a law on North Korea's human rights is finally set to go into effect next month. Connie Kim tells us what the law is all about and some of the contentious points are.
A new law on North Korean human rights is set to go into effect next month, which aims to tackle abysmal human rights violations in the reclusive regime. The act was first submitted in 2005, but as liberals opposed to the establishment that such law would deteriorate inter-Korean relations, the bill was held up in Parliament for 11 years until March this year. South Korea's Unification Ministry in charge of inter-Korean affairs will set up a human rights foundation to propose policies over humanitarian aid to be sent to the North Korean people. The foundation will also support relevant civic groups to monitor human rights situation in the North. A North Korean Human Rights Records Center will also be established to investigate and officially document cases of human rights violations in the reclusive regime. Up until now, such violations were investigated by government-funded research centers and agencies. The records on North Korea's human rights violations will be handed over to the Ministry of Justice every quarter, where they'll be administered in a North Korean human rights archive. The ministry's archive aims at keeping tabs on those who are responsible of human rights violations and hold them accountable for their crimes in the future. Contentious issues remain in the newly set law, especially whether the law will be able to support North Korean defectors living in third countries through civic groups. An official from Seoul's Unification Ministry said such issue will need to be discussed further after the law goes into effect, considering diplomatic relations with third countries. In addition, there is criticism that no specified objective has been set for the human rights law, as in whether it should lean more towards punishing abuses or improving the human rights situation in the North. Pyongyang has always reacted sensitively towards a soon-to-be effective human rights law, calling it a fabrication to forcibly reunify the Korean peninsula. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Seventh, the South Korean Foreign Ministry has confirmed that 2 South Korean citizens remain missing in China near the North Korean border. According to Seoul's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Cho Jun-hyuk, a South Korean consulate in the region had been informed of 7 missing people, but 5 have since been located. Cho noted the growing concern over possible terrorism or abductions by the North after a string of recent defections, especially that of North Korea's deputy ambassador to the UK. Threats from the north led the South Korean embassy in Beijing to recently issue an emergency notice to its citizens to avoid the border area and contact with North Koreans. U.S. President Barack Obama and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping are expected to discuss the tense situation on the Korean peninsula when they meet in China this weekend. Speaking at the White House on Monday, U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes said that the two will meet on Saturday, a day before the G20 summit kicks off in Hangzhou. The two leaders are likely to share their views on that deployment in South Korea, a move China strongly opposes. The global economy, climate change, and mutual efforts in non-proliferation through the Iran nuclear deal are also on the agenda. A turn for the worse for Korea's largest container shipping company. Creditors for Hanjin Shipping have ruled out any new financial support. And looming in the near future is court receivership. The company is running out of options. Hwang Ho-jun reports.
One step closer to bankruptcy. Hanjin Shipping's creditors have decided unanimously to end their financial support for Korea's largest shipping company. With Hanjin's creditor-led restructuring scheme for Hanjin set to end on Sunday, many expected to be left with little choice but to file for receivership before the deadline. The company's creditors, including Korea Development Bank, said continuing to financially support Hanjin would be like, quote, trying to fill a bottomless vessel. Hanjin claimed last week it would raise about $450 million by selling assets and obtaining financial aid from Korean Air, the country's flagship airline, which Hanjin Group controls. But creditors said the self-rescue plan fell short of their demands. They said the company would need to find twice that amount to pay its own short-term debts, its chartered ship owners, and operational costs. According to its mid-year report on June 30th, Hanjin had total debts of about $5.5 billion. The company has yet to make an official statement about the credit cutoff. After the news broke, shares of Hanjin Shipping dropped more than 26%. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Korea's central bank governor has acknowledged there's now a higher possibility that the U.S. Federal Reserve could raise its interest rates. In Tuesday's meeting on current economic conditions, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol cited remarks made last week by Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen. Yellen said in a speech Friday to central bankers and policymakers at a meeting in Wyoming, quote, the case for an increase in the federal fund rate has strengthened in recent months. That sent Wall Street's estimated odds for a rate hike in December up to around 60%. Governor Lee also said it's important that Korea's economy has received a positive assessment from global credit rating agencies. A cure for Zika might be around the corner. Scientists in the United States have identified medical compounds that could be used to treat the so far incurable virus, which is believed to cause brain deformities in newborn babies. Woo Soo-young tells us more.
Researchers at the National Centre for Advancing Translational Sciences say they've identified two groups of drugs that could effectively counter the mosquito-borne Zika virus. One of them stops the virus from replicating, and the other stops the virus from killing fetal brain cells. They've identified three drugs: an investigational compound with antiviral properties, a chemical called amikazin, which has shown neuroprotective effects, and niclosamide, which is already being used as an antiviral agent against parasitic infections. Using robot screening, the team examined 6,000 compounds that are already approved for human use or undergoing clinical trial, hoping this would help get the treatments to infected people more quickly. The Zika virus has been linked to serious birth defects in babies, including an abnormally small head resulting from brain deformities. It's primarily transmitted through bites from Aedes aegypti mosquitoes and can also be spread through childbirth and sexual contact. The World Health Organization says there are currently no vaccines or drug treatments effective against the virus, which has been reported in 60 countries so far. Recently, there have been a growing number of Zika cases in Southeast Asia, where the virus has been locally transmitted. The tropical environment in the region provides a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Singapore reported on Monday 56 cases of Zika, all of them infected locally. Thailand saw the largest number of patients in the region. In the first half of this year, Thailand saw close to 100 Zika cases, when it usually sees just 2 to 5 in a whole year. Countries around the world, including Korea, Australia and Taiwan, have issued travel alerts to citizens visiting Southeast Asia, advising them to take additional measures to protect themselves from mosquitoes and pregnant women to postpone their trips. Woo Soo-young, Arirang News.
The Korean Transport Ministry announced plans to improve and significantly extend the nation's expressways over the next 4 years. For details, let's turn to our Iji-won.
Driving around Korea, a country notorious for its bumper-to-bumper traffic, could become a more pleasurable experience in a few years' time. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport announced Tuesday that it plans to use the latest smart technology to radically overhaul the road network and add an extra 882 kilometers of expressway by 2020. It'll expand the total length of expressway in the country to more than 5,000 kilometers by the target year. The plan includes making all bridges earthquake-proof and completely repaving old expressways rather than patching up sections as and when necessary. The ministry will also increase the number of roadside rest areas, increase a fog warning system, and allocate more snow removal equipment. The nation's toll system will also be updated. Toll areas will all be fitted with cameras to read and recognize plate numbers, so drivers can pay the toll automatically without having to stop. The plan will also make more than 78% of Korea's total area accessible by an expressway, up from the current 71%. Nearly 96% of the entire population will also be able to access an expressway within half an hour from their homes. The government will spend around $33 billion from the nation's tax coffers on the project, while attracting almost the same amount in private investment. 이지원, Arirang News.
That's our newscast for this hour. Thank you for watching.